Also live and alive. Gewaldig. For a good reason. Thank you for the hara, for the lechem upon him.
Oh my God, that's changed. Oh my God, that was.
It's a paradigm shift, huh?
Was it the start of the Eagles?
Yeah. The base Yaakov is called.
Oh my God, that was.
I think it's from him. So.
My father sang those mirrors for all those years. And who knew?
Oh, you got a long time. I got an email from a lady. She writes to me that from Muncie.
We should have an email of the day.
She's a granddaughter of the Yid HaKadosh. She said she never ever told anybody. Her husband, her kids. Why? She was embarrassed. She was embarrassed by it. Why was she embarrassed? Because in her mind, the whole Hasidic culture was so peasantry and insensitive and not sophisticated and brute. Kugel and more kugel and more kugel. Social events. And
If anything, his Talmudim were machadish the whole.
so she never told anybody. Then she said, I started to listen to your class, and then I said, it's a whole other.
The whole new world out there.
Yeah, she said, no, I'm proud of myself, my lineage. I'm telling my kids. Okay.
She moved to Crown Heights?
No, she lives here. I don't know who she is. You want me? Okay.
Hashem, I was looking for a mistake in the prints and the copies. Finally, I found it. Now I feel good.
We have here one of the Blue Chumash over there, right there, no? The opening of Shir Hashirim, of the Song of Songs, reads Shir Hashirim Asher L'Shloima, the Song of Songs of Shloima. So Rashi brings the first Rashi of Shir Hashirim. Amar Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva said, Lo yhaya ha'olam kedai ki yoyim shenitin by Shir Hashirim liYisrael. The world was not kedai. Literally, it means it was not a worthy place, like the day when Shir Hashirim was given to the Jewish people. It's almost like the world wasn't kedai. It was worthless. It was futile. It was meaningless. Certainly, completely not comparable to the kedayis, to the worthiness, to the value of the world on the day when Shir Hashirim was given to the Jewish people. There was no such a day before. Why? Shekol Ksuvim Kodesh. All the Ksuvim, all the writings of the Tanakh, all the Ksuvim, what we call Ksuvim, are all holy. But Shir Hashirim, Kodesh Kadashim. Shir Hashirim is the holy of holies. Now, this shouldn't be taken for granted because there's a Mishnah in Maseches Yadayim that debates whether Shir Hashirim belonged in the Tanakh. After all, it's the only sefer of Tanakh. When you read it, the 8 chapters of Shir Hashirim from beginning to end, you read it at face value, there's absolutely nothing here that is connected by any stretch of the imagination to any theme of the Tanakh. Moral guidance, moral instruction, Jewish history, Torah, mitzvahs, Musar, ethics. The entire Shir Hashirim is basically a very sensual, graphic poem about the relationship of two people, a lover and a beloved, ani l'doidi v'doidi li, in very, very graphic, elaborate and physical terms, to the point that in the secular world till today, many poems of love, etc., are direct quotes from Lahavdil Shir Hashirim. And therefore some of the sages felt it shouldn't be canonized, it should not be included in the Tanakh. It doesn't belong here. Even Megillas Esther, which doesn't have Hashem's name, is the only sefer that doesn't have Hashem's name, but the whole sefer represents the Hashgacha. The whole Megillas Esther represents the divine providence in history. Even though it seems there's a tale about politics, intrigue, and anti-Semitism. Shir Hashirim doesn't have God's name once, but there's no message of providence. It has Hashem's name once at the end. Rishafer Rishvei Shalevis Yutke. On this, Rabbi Akiva said 2 words: Chas v'shalom. When they said that Shir Hashirim doesn't belong, the Mishnah says Rabbi Akiva said Chas v'shalom. Kol Aksuvim Kodesh v'Shir Hashirim Kodesh Kadashim. It's holier than everything else. And he adds here that the Olam, the world, was not Kedai, like the day Shir Hashirim was given to the Jewish people. Which at first glance is very strange. Shir Hashirim, according to our tradition, was written by Shlomo HaMelech. That is, some 500 years after the Jewish people entered into the land of Eretz Yisrael. The Beis HaMikdash was built by Shlomo around 440 years after they entered into the land. So this is some point, 440, 450, 500 that time. He says, Lo haya ha'olam kedai. Like that day, the world was not a worthy place. You have Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov and the Shvatim and Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah and Ma'amad Har Sinai. The fundamental blocks of Jewish, the fundamental components of Jewish history. And then you have Yeshua and you have the Shoftim and you have the Nevi'im and you have the first Malachim before. And each of them gave the world a tremendous light. Never mind the light that came down after Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. And Rabbi Akiva makes us a psak din, a verdict. Lo hoya olam kedai. No. That day that they got Shir Hashirim is an important sefer, the 8 chapters of Shir Hashirim. But that's the day that made the world kedai. The world was not kedai like that day. It trumps every other day. So one of the explanations in this is basically the theme that is being conveyed here in this Maimer of the Yadaita Moskva, Tofresh Nun Zayin, by the Rebbe Nishma Se'edin, and the theme has to do with the fact that the world is a mashal. It's a mashal for a nimshal. Like every mashal, a good mashal is the way that the nimshal, the idea behind the mashal is of course a parable, an anecdote, a metaphor. The metaphor is simply a metaphor to be able to convey the message, a message through the metaphor. The metaphor is a garment that allows you, a lavush, that allows you access to the theme behind the metaphor. That's what a good mashal is. You say, I'll give you a mashal The mashal is here to convey the nimshal. That's what a mashal is. That's what a metaphor, a parable, a story, an anecdote, a joke, an illustration. Allegory, we call it allegory. Allegorical. What's allegory? Allegory is the idea of, you know what allegory is, yeah? Allegoria. Huh? So you learned a new word today. Okay. Shen kedai, lahoya olam kedai. A mashal. Well, a mashal is echt good. The mashal, there's a Chuvas HaRashba. Charles Chuvas HaRashba, I think it's Simon Taf Yud Ches, he criticizes very heavily. There was a man named Philo of Alexandria, who lived during the second Beis Hamikdash. He was a great Greek Jewish scholar, and he wrote that the stories in Sefer Bereshis are metaphors. They're allegories. In order, you want to tell children a story, start telling them ideas. They're not interested in ideas, right? You're going to read me a story, I'll listen to the story, but the story contains messages behind them. Yeah, that's the idea of a story. So it makes it more practical, more accessible, more engaging, more interesting, more curious. I'm interested in a story, the drama of it, the ups and the downs and the journeys and the twists and the turns, like any good novel, any good story. So he tained, Philin Alexandri tained, and the Rashba goes b'cherev b'chanis, he attacks it very heavily, that the stories in Sefer, the stories in the Tanakh are basic allegories. They're mishalim, they're metaphors. Now the Rambam himself held that a lot of the stories are all nevuah, prophecy, right? The whole story of the donkey with Bilam, the Rambam holds it was a prophecy, it was a vision of Bilam. The story of Eitz Hadas, the Rambam holds was a vision of Adam and Chava. It was a vision in the Moreh Nevuchim. Okay, this itself is a huge argument among the Rishonim how to understand the different stories. But the idea that he said that the stories are a mashal, that's what they are. The Torah is trying to convey ideas through a mashal. That's called allegory. That's allegory. So this Dirajba attacks very heavily. But what's the point? That the whole world is essentially a mashal. What does it mean that it's a mashal? It's a mashal to a nimshal. What's the nimshal? The nimshal is the divine. And there's nothing in the world that's not a mashal. In which sefer of Tanakh is this conveyed most? It's conveyed in Shir HaShirim. Why? Every other sefer of Tanakh deals with, whether you talk about Chumash or the Sfarim of Tanakh, either it's Torah or it's mitzvahs or it's ethics or it's Musar, like Mishlei or Koheles, right? Or it's certain chapters of Jewish history like Shoftim and Shmuel and Malachim that have their own messages about behavior and conduct and our national identity and Eretz Yisrael, etc. Or it's Svarim that somehow represent clearly God's message to the world and to the Jewish people. When you look at the Shir HaShirim, it's basically a story of love that develops in some field by two shepherds who are out there grazing the flock. They develop a connection with each other, and everybody's against the shidduch, and they beat him, and they persecute her, and despite all odds, they keep on meeting, and then separating, and meeting, and separating 5 times, and so forth. Which is why, from a secular perspective, till today, Shir HaShirim is completely seen as a fiery love poem that is employed in many, many areas and in many situations, and not necessarily in the most noble and refined and ethical and pure and sacred formats and expressions. What we would call Yenikas HaChitzayna. And yet, Shlomo HaMelech wrote it in this particular fashion. So Rashi says, immediately, and all the Mefarshim say, and this is the function of the Mefarshim of Shir HaShirim, that Shir HaShirim is a metaphor. It's a mashal. Stellt sich the Shaila, so what are you writing it as a mashal? Write it as an imshal. The rest of Tanakh is written as an imshal. Rashi says in the beginning, Kula Yiras Shamayim v'kibul el malchusay. The whole Shir HaShirim is Yiras Shamayim. V'kibul el malchusay. So write it as Yiras Shamayim. There was once a certain publisher who published Shir HaShirim, and instead of translating the words from Hebrew to English, in the translation he already inserted the Mefarshim. I remember I once needed to quote the Pasuk Shir HaShirim, the translation. So I needed the exact English. It's hard words. I looked it up. And I'm reading the translation, and I say, this doesn't say Shashirim. I never saw this. I looked, I saw he's not translating the words. He's taking the commentary and putting it in the translations. I look at his introduction, and he says, since all the Mefarshim explain that it's not Pshat, the Pshat of Shashirim is not Pshat, it's a mashal, so there's no room to explain it in English as is. So that's why he already put in the commentary in the English.
His own commentary.
No, he took from the Mefarshim, not his own. He took from the Mefarshim. Not his own commentary. It wasn't distorted commentary. It was just not literal commentary. It was explaining, but in the commentary, not in the footnotes. So it reminded me of the famous story that there was a Yid, they say in Warsaw, Lahavdil, and he translated William Shakespeare into Yiddish. Yeah. So on the cover page, on the Scharblad, he wrote like this: Romeo and Juliet from William Shakespeare, übergesetzt und verbessert durch Shlomo Finkelstein. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, translated and enhanced by Shlomo Finkelstein. Lahavdil. The point is, Shlomo could have also written it in a certain way. He wrote it this way. Why? The reason is because this itself is the revolutionary idea of Shehashirim. That human love, in its deepest and most authentic reality, is a mashal. It's a manifestation, it's an expression, it's a facilitator, it's a mirror for the divine love to his creation, for the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, between Hashem and the world, between Hashem and humanity. Had he written Shir Hashirim with the Nimshal only, we would have gotten we would have gotten one message, but we would have lost one of its most important messages. And its most important messages is that the love and the romance and the affection between the two genders in this world, of course, like any powerful thing in the world, could be manipulated and used in unethical ways. But in its core, what is it? It's the divine manifestation of love in this world. In other words, to suck the marrow out of any romantic and loving relationship is only if you'll see it as a mashal for an nimshal. Just like any mashal, you'll never understand fully the meaning of the mashal if you don't trace it back to the nimshal. The whole mashal is a manifestation of the nimshal. On this, Rebbe Akiva says, till the day Shashirim was given to the Jewish people, you could look at the world and say, ultimately, the world in and of itself is a futile place. It's a pruzador, it's a corridor. You have to work it through in order to get to the real place. But the world itself is not a life to be celebrated. It's a shtusim and havalim, it's a pustun vist, it's toyu vavayu, v'choshech al pnei saim, it's a place of taivus, yetzahara, tumah, klippus, sitra achera, chitzoinim, shoivavim, tikunim, and and everything else. It's a place of garbage and filth, yoim and v'layla, run as fast as possible, and over there in that world there'll be clarity, there'll be goodness, there'll be holiness, and the whole purpose here is just to get over here you have to get the receipts. You could show the receipts up there, and they give you a seat. They give you a seat in the ultimate divine theater with the Levyasin and Sher Habar and all the other good things over there. But this world is a place of garbage. Shir Hashirim was a revolution. Doesn't say there were no other greater days. When did the world become a place of Kedai? Shir Hashirim was Megala of art. That Gashmius is a mashal for Ruchnes. That the Guf is a mirror for the Neshama. That earth is a continuum of heaven.
Shir Hashirim is a gilui in terms of divine love being manifested in human love. From that, you have to say a leap and say the whole world is really the same much.
But this is Hashirim tackles the issue that people would call the most base component of human nature that creates endless temptation, anxiety, conflict. The first murder in history. Right, Cain murders Heva. Rashi says, at least one of the opinions is over a sister. It's over this type of love.
So
right. In other words, And Shlomo Melech doesn't mention a word explicitly of ruchnius, of spiritual. He's talking completely in the physical sense because that's his point. He speaks about cheeks, and he speaks about a nose, and he speaks about eyes, and he speaks about a forehead, and he speaks about the chest, and he speaks about the hands, and he speaks about... He gets extremely, extremely detailed. If it would have been written today, you know what they would have done with Shir Hashirim? Thank God it was written by Shlomo Melech, so nobody can destroy it. But that Lo Haya Ha'olam Kedai, Shehashirim taught that the physical is a mirror of the spiritual, that earth is a reflection of heaven, that the body is a continuum of the soul, and hence physical love, bodily love, and the affection between two people down here, which by definition includes not only spirituality and values, but also physical dimensions, in its truest form. I'm going to say again, like everything in life, it can be distorted and misused. But in its truest form, what is it? It's a mashal for the nimshal. And that's why he says everything is kodesh, but Shehashirim is kodesh kadashim. What's the difference between kodesh and kodesh kadashim? So the Baal HaTanya writes in Likutei Torah, Shehashirim, kodesh means muvdal, above. Rashi says kadoshim to you. You remember? Prushim to you. Kedusha heißt precious, right? Separation, segregation. Hecher, aloof, sublime. Kaddish, you say something is holy, it's unique, it's distinct. Hareat mekudeshesli also means there's a distinctiveness. Tosfos says miyuchedesli, mizumenesli. When you say something is kaddish, you attribute to it something distinct. A Sefer Torah is holy, a shul is holy, a Sefer is holy, this person is holy, this day is holy, Shabbos, Yom Tov. That's what Pashtus Kedusha. It stands in its own category, aloof, above everything else. That's Kodesh, above. What's Kodesh Kadashim? It says Kodesh Kadashim is, it's above from being above. It's parish from precious. It doesn't have to be segregated. It could infuse reality. Kodesh means higher. Kodesh Kadashim means it's higher than the need to be higher. It's so high that it can come down low as well. Like we learned before, Keshem sheyesh lekoyach bebligvul, kach yesh lekoyach begvul. Kedusha is infinity. Kodesh Kadashim is, you're so infinite, you don't have to be infinite, you can be finite too. It's so high that it doesn't have to remain high, it doesn't have to remain above, it can rather come in. There's a level of Kedusha where you detach. Kodesh Kadashim doesn't detach, comes right back. Shehashirim is Kodesh Kadashim. The rest of Ksuvim is Kodesh. It was the Mir Rosh Yeshiva, Reb Chaim Shmulevitch. Reb Chaim Shmulevitch Zatzal, so he writes in his one of his Musar Shmuz, he said once in the Mir that Rabbi Krieger would tape his shiurim, so he gave me a bunch of his shiurim from the Mir. So he once said that the beautiful word that the Shevet of Kedusha, the tribe of Kedusha by the Jewish people, is Shevet Levi. And Reb Elchanan, you didn't think you'll come here, Shia, and hear from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in the Mir, right? Huh? Okay. I can also say from Reb Shmuel Birnbaum if you want. So, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz once said that the Shevet of Kedusha is Shevet Levi. Yeah? Kedusha belongs to Levi. The Koyanim came from them, and the Levi came from him, and the Leviim came from him. Yorim Mishpatecha LeYaakov, V'Ser Yisrael Yisrael, Yosim Uktayr Baal Pecha. That's the tribe that was designated for Kedusha. And you wonder, why Shevet Levi? What did Levi do somehow that engendered this gene? The Koyanim have a special gene we know today, right? That engendered this gene. So the way we learn it in school, in yeshiva and cheder, is that they were the ones that did not sin during the golden calf, when Moshe said, Mila Hashem Eloi vayasvu elav kol b'nei Levi. This was the only Shevet that remained loyal and pure when there was so much more chaos going on during the Chet HaEgel. The question then is, that should have then began at the Chet HaEgel, and indeed it went from the B'chorim, the way it went from the B'chorim to the Levim, but you see already that in Mitzrayim, right, Rashi says Aaron, Moshe and Aaron were free to come and go whenever they want. Why? They didn't have to work, because Shevet Levi was given the distinction by Paro himself that they could sit and learn all day. They didn't have to work. In other words, already before Yetzias Mitzrayim, before the Chet HaEgel, Levi somehow had this quality of sacredness, of being distinct, And to the point that Paro didn't enslave them, Paro respected the fact that there's a tribe among the Jewish people that is holy. And indeed later it came out in the Beis HaMikdash and in the Mishkan with Aaron and the Kohanim and the Levim throughout Jewish history, Ad Hayom Hazeh, in all of the unique elements of holiness that our dear beloved Kohanim here have. V'kidashta, as the Pasuk says, V'kidashta. Hast gewusst, du bist so heilig? Okay. Jetzt weißt du. So Hälfte, Teute Bankes, ja. And so you look in Chumash and you want to see, what did Levi do? Levi was the Steiger of the family. Loved Dafka. When it came to Shechem, Levi was a pretty aggressive boy, yeah? Yosef separated Shimon from Levi. Yaakov was quite upset at Shimon and Levi. Acharta Moisi. At his deathbed in Parshas Vayechi, he has sharp words to say Shimon and Levi. So Reb Chaim writes that there's one thing you see about Levi, fascinating word, one thing only, when you go to the Genesis, and that is, when Leah was married to Yaakov, so she had a first son, and she said, Ra Hashem ba'ani, Hashem saw my pain, and she named him Reuven. She had a second son, and she said, Shama Hashem kisnu anochi. Hashem heard that I'm loathed, and she named him Shimon. And then she had a third son. And the third son, she said, Hapam yilave ishi elai. Now I feel that my husband is going to come close to me. He's going to accompany me. He's going to be part of me. Levi means to accompany, to escort, to be part of me. Now I feel my husband is going to come close to me, and she named him Levi. What was it about Levi that suddenly changed Leah's paradigm? So there's Mefarshim that say, the Ksav and the Kabbalah and others say, that it was very technical, because when you have one boy, so you hold him on one arm. You have a second child, you hold him on the second arm. Now she had a third one, she says, Hapam, you love ishi elai. Finally, my husband is going to help me. I can only carry two children on two arms. There's a third baby. Finally, Yaakov is going to come home, and he's going to start helping. Okay, it's a cute, humorous word. And then there's other explanations. But one thing is clear. Sometimes you look at a child, and the child has an energy. The child does something to the couple. The child does something to the house. Every child comes with a certain with a certain light. And even at a very young age, butzin, mekatfi yediyah, and sometimes even more, younger than that, the child already brings into the house a certain serenity, a certain smile, a certain simcha. Every child with his or her unique pekela, unique energy and oil that they bring into the world. When Leah took a look at Levi, she said, there's something about this boy, hapam yilava ishi elai. This marriage is going to become better. What does her marriage have to do with the baby? This was Levi. In other words, the moment he was born, what did he do? He brought people together. A husband and a wife, his father and mother. What's the definition of Kedusha? Definition of ultimate Kedusha. The Pasuk says, Vayavdel Aaron lahakdisha kodesh kadashim. What's the ultimate Kedusha? Ultimate Kedusha in Yiddishkeit is not you're more aloof, you're more sublime, you're more detached, you're more segregated. Ultimate Kedusha is you show the unity of everything, the cohesiveness, the harmony. Sometimes people associate Shalom Bayis with the compromise of Kedusha. The more holy you are, the more you don't look, the more you don't know, the more heavenly you are, the more detached you are, right? Many of us, we associate Kedusha or Kedusha, sorry for the Litvish pronouncement, probably it'll work better with Kedusha, but whatever it is, Kedusha or Kedusha, we associate it with a certain, it's like almost the less you know, the more you're detached, the more you're like in the heavens somewhere, the holier you are. Which is often a very impressive, or not, feature. Whatever, that, but the ultimate Kedusha is Apam Yilava Ishi Elai. That when you come into the room, people come together. There's more harmony, there's more understanding, there's more respect, there's more peace. So that's what you see about Levi that engendered holiness. In Kedusha itself, this is the difference of Kodesh and Kodesh Kodashim. So Rabbi Akiva is the one who nichnas b'shalom, v'yatza b'shalom, from the four that nichnas u'lepardis. Nobody survived. Elisha ben Avoya became a heretic, and Ben Azariah and Ben Zoma, one of them passed away, and one of them became insane. It was only Rabbi Akiva who nichnas b'shalom, v'yatza b'shalom. He went in peace, and he came out in peace. And before they went into the paradise, Rabbi Akiva told him, the Gemara says, Maseches Chagiga Daf Tesvav, Rabbi Akiva said that you're going to see in the paradise. Paradise means the deep mystical realms that they all went to. You're going to see a lot of strange things. He said, Al toimru mayim. Don't say water. Don't say water. They did, and they all failed. So the Balatanya asks, what's this instruction? Al Taimru Mayim Mayim. And he says an unbelievable word. That when the world was created, there was only one water. And then the second day, Hashem split the Mayim, Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtainim. The second day, right? The first day, Bereshit Bara Elokim es Hashemayim v'Haaretz, v'Ruach Elokim rachefes al pnei hamayim. The second day of creation, he says, Yehi Rakia v'Mavdil be'Mayim l'Mayim. The firmament should separate between the higher water and the lower water. So now we have the lower water on earth, all of the oceans and the lakes and the rivers and the canals and the streams, which on Tuesday retreat into the places, the pockets of water and oceans, etc. And you have Mayim Elyonim, the water above the heaven. Whether it's referring to the water they discover on Mars or other waters that they discover. It's not relevant to our discussion, but the point is there was a split between two waters, Mayim Elyonim, Mayim Tachtainim. And the Zohar says, Mayim Tachtainim boichim manan bin l'mevi kadam malka. The lower waters weep, we want to stand in front of the king. Why were we rejected and sent down and separated from the higher waters? And Rashi says that the whole idea of Nisach HaMayim on Sukkot, pouring the water on Sukkot, which created Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, the greatest dancing is bringing the Mayim Tachtoinim back to the Mizbeach. And that's why you also use salt for every carbon, because salt is often found in the waters, and you use that for the carbon. Again, it's bringing the Mayim Tachtoinim. What's this idea of Mayim Tachtoinim Baichim? Mayim is associated very much with pleasure, Tainug. Mayim atzmichim kol minei tainug. You'll see there's a unique pleasure that is triggered by people when they're in front of water. There's a special attraction that water has in the human psyche. You stand in front of water, people go in water, see water, watch water. There's a certain calmness, a certain delight that water engenders. I don't mean a mikveh. I mean, yeah, unless it's very a heisa mikveh, but then it's not the mikveh, it's the heiskite. But an ocean, large water, or a lake, there's something about water. It's there's a calming, soothing effect that reminds people, and there's reasons for it psychologically and biologically and certainly spiritually. There's a magic, yeah. You're coming from Florida, right? You're going to go back to Florida, I'm sure. V'chuli. So the natural habitat of the Jewish people during the winter months. Yeah, I mean, Tashlach is a different Indian, but okay, yeah. So, Mayim very much associated with Tainug. The first day of creation, there was only one Mayim. There was only one definition of pleasure. The second day of creation, there's a split. There's Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtoinim. Mayim Elyonim is the higher water, a higher form of pleasure that's associated with your core. And Mayim Tachtoinim is broken types of pleasures that are escapes and numbers of Mayim Elyonim. Rabbi Akiva told the boys, they weren't boys, they were big men. He told his colleagues, Elisha ben Avuya, Ben Azai and Ben Zayma, Al Toimru Mayim Mayim. You're going to go see some heavy things. The worst thing you could do is say Mayim twice. Create a split between Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtoinim. Al Toimru Mayim Mayim. Don't say that. Because what happens then is you will not be able to translate what you see in the real world. And that's exactly what happened. One of them died because of the oir. The voltage was too intense, like Nadav and Avihu. The Rechaim says they wanted to kiss God, and there was no place to be in this world. One of them lost his mind, Kivayachal, Hitzitz v'nivga. And one of them, Kitzitz b'netiyas, which means he lost his Yiddishkeit, he lost his faith. He saw things, and he just couldn't handle it. Elisha ben Avuya and Rebbe Akiva, Nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. And that's what he told them, Al Toimru Mayim Mayim. In other words, Mayim Tachtoinim and Mayim Elyonim, even though it's two Mayims, but the avodah of the Jew is Al Toimru Mayim Mayim. Don't say Mayim Mayim. Because the entire period, the entire separation is only that you should be able to unify it by seeing it as a mashal for a nimshal. So Rabbi Akiva is the one. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says, Lo haya ha'olam kedai. When did the olam become kedai? Of course, there were greater days than the day Shir Hashirim was given. You can't say Shir Hashirim was greater than Matan Torah, Yitzias Mitzrayim. We have a Yom Tov for Matan Torah and Yitzias Mitzrayim. Pesach, Shavuos, not for the day. We don't even know the day Shir Hashirim was given. I mean, some say it was the day that of the Chanukah's Beis Hamikdash, or whatever. However you understand it. Basi Legani Achosi Kala. But the point is, Lo haya ha'olam kedai. It's the day that the world became kedai. And this is the Yesod Gadol, that when you could see it as a mashal for a nimshul, then it's not separated anymore. Then it's not Maya Maya. As he puts it, when you see it as a mashal and you see it as a nimshul, then the person sees, even in the soil, even in the soil, meaning in the most physical, minute, brute dimension of the physical soil, that it's not separated from its divine and spiritual shayrish. On the contrary, it's the madrega helyoiner shaba b'koyach ein sof b'hakshama. It's divine energy, the way it assumes a physical incarnation. And this is true about everything literally in the world. And I'm going to give at the moment I'm going to give one mashal for this. We have a Dr. Marshall, he'll correct me about all the facts. It's a mashal, even here, even the mashal itself is an important mashal. The mashal just in and of itself, because we say every morning, Roifei chal basar umafli lasos. It's part of the mafli lasos. In every single human body, a river flows. But really not a river. A river is an inadequate term. A river system. With all types of pathways and roads. And you could say tens of billions of channels. Which allows this extraordinary river of fluid to flow through our organism, through our body. It circulates our body, I think, around 3 times a minute. 3 times every minute, it circulates through our entire body. During the day, it travels 12,000 miles. That's 4 times the coast of U.S., the United States of America, from coast to coast. 4 times you're traveling America from coast to coast. During a day, you don't even know it. All inside, half of the world. 12,000 miles. If you would take this river, and this full river, and lay it out, side to side, lay it out, it would stretch 60,000 miles. And this is what goes on in our body, and I'm, of course, referring to the circulation of the blood. The blood circulates through the body, and its function is to provide oxygen, nourishment, to all of the organs, to all of the bones, to all of the tissue, and really to every single cell of the approximately 40 trillion cells, trillion, not billion, 40 trillion cells, approximately 37 trillion approximate cells, 37 trillion cells that exist in the body to provide oxygen, nourishment, nutrition, and life, vitality to each of them. As the Pasuk says, Ki nefesh, habasar, bedami, hadam, hu ha-nefesh, which really means that the blood contains the vitality, the oxygen, the nourishment for every cell in the body. It has another function. To battle adversaries, to battle infection, to battle bacteria, to attack and get rid of, to the best of its ability, all those components that are threatening the human organism in any form or any manifestation. Excuse me. This is one of the most magical, extraordinary, splendid facts about human life, among billions and trillions of others. Just to analyze and know what your blood does at every single moment of the day. And of course, we run to the doctor when there's chas v'shalom a problem or a challenge. But for years and decades, people are completely unaware of what their body is doing and how it knows how to do it, how it knows to do this, and to do it every single second of the day when you're awake and when you're asleep and non-stop. And it never says, you know what? I'm having a bad day today. I'm not interested. It's time to relax. You don't have to move. I got to tug my gate, my life, my hakt, my life, hakafas v'simchas Torah. That doesn't happen. And it's all inside, and it's in this little or big body. It's haflu a fella. Roifei chal basar mafli lasos, which is why we say Birchas HaShachar every day to meditate and to reflect on this and so many other phenomena that are similar to this, which is essential to life. A person can't live without this, as we know. Rachmana litzlan, when this stops, it's just with the parts that need the blood don't get the blood. A person can't function. The cells will die in a very short time, and the person can't live. Generally, there's 2 types of blood cells. There's the red blood cells, and there are the white blood cells. What are they called? Leukocytes. What's the difference? Huh? Yes. What's the difference? The red blood cells, and there are approximately 25 trillion red blood cells in the body. Their function is to provide the oxygen and the nourishment to the rest of the cells and to all of the organs of the body, including the heart itself. The white blood cells, their function is to combat infection, to combat bacteria, and to eliminate all the threats that may undermine the human system. Two functions, which is why when we see an increase in white blood cells, our antennas go up, because that means the body is struggling with something, and sometimes something very serious. Kiyadua. The ratio between red blood cells and white blood cells is approximately 700 to 1. 700 to 1. In other words, the red blood cells outnumber the white blood cells incomparably. It's very, very significantly, dramatically. A ratio of 700 to 1. When you look in Teres HaNister, this whole thing, whole concept I just said, and just one nekuda, it's a mirror and a reflection of a fundamental truth in spirituality, a fundamental truth in Torah. Mipsari echze leka. The reason our flesh is constructed a certain way is from there you could perceive the divine. It's because the divine energy is constructed that way. Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu, the human system is a reflection of that. The Zohar says, "Estakel b'raisa baralma." He looked into Torah and the world was created, so everything in the world could be found in the original blueprint, as we discussed in the previous year, which is Torah. In life and in Yiddishkeit, there's blood, and there's two types of blood cells. There's the white blood cells and red blood cells. When you take a look at Torah, its function is Zois HaTorah Adam. Vayitzavenu Hashem lasis es kol hachukam ha'ela l'chiyosenu, to give life. Ki hem chayenu va'orech yamenu, to give life. But to give life means two things. First of all, to give oxygen, inspiration, nourishment to human life. And number two, to combat all the infections and bacteria in human life. Person only has what red blood cells or only white blood cells, it's not going to work. The first thing a life needs is inspiration, infusion, meaning, purpose, joy, happiness. You need oxygen. Dafken and atamen. You need nourishment. L'chu lachmu b'lachmi. Torah is called lechem. Ein mayim ela Torah. V'seirascha b'soich meya. In other words, there's the element of life that requires the red blood cells constantly to be able to infuse your life with purpose and meaning, and joy and excitement and vitality and passion and stamina, invigoration. Sometimes you have a person physically alive but emotionally dead. But in order to have that, you also have to have instructions and guidance of how to deal with bacteria, how to deal with infections, how to deal with addictions, how to deal with moods and experiences and encounters and temptations and instincts that undermine the healthiness of the body. Because if you're going to allow that infection to spread, allow that bacteria to take over, the body will shut down, Rahman al-Islam. And that's why you have in Torah mitzvahs aseh, and you have mitzvahs loisaseh. There's what to do, how you build yourself, and there's what not to do. And yet, what must be the focus of Yiddishkeit? Cultivating the good or combating the negative? A ratio from 700 to 1. From the blood cells that nourish to the blood cells that fight. The main function of Torah is to build, to nurture, to nourish, to bring vitality and oxygen, luft. Yes, any healthy life system, any system to give life also has to combat. If there's no sur meirah, the asay tov ultimately will become futile. Because every yes must include a no. But what's the focus? What should be the majority of one's interaction with their children? Positive or negative? A ratio from 700 to 1. Maybe that's a little too idealistic. But at least 75% positive, and maybe 25% sometimes harsh or disciplined. And when you have a house, and most of the time it's just screaming and rebuking and chastising, and there's very little love and affection, the ratio is the opposite. The main function always has to be the positive, to build a positive. Yes, you also have to put limits, and you have to put guards, and you have to put things in check. Huh?
Once in 2 years.
Huh?
Red blood cells have a lifespan
Of 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the mitzvahs loises are doch passive. Man tut doch nicht.
Yeah, but you said
Yashav lo yavar aved asik in teuchen.
That's the white blood cells.
That's the white blood cells, but they're not active. You don't a whole day. You don't sit and do lysis. So you don't do it. You stay away from it.
Where's the ratio of 700 to 1?
That's where's the ratio?
No, I'm bringing out that the positive, as a marshal, I'm bringing out that the positive component of Yiddishkeit must be significantly more powerful than its negative component.
In biology, if someone has a tremendous increase in white cells, those are never severe diseases.
Right.
When the white cells outnumber the blood cells, those
Yes.
are regular
Right.
diseases. There's the
Yeah.
parallel as well
Yeah.
in human relationships.
Yeah, in human relationships, when the white blood cells outnumber the red blood cells, you know that there's a very serious disease in the person.
It's a question of focus. I know.
Focus, yeah. Right. Yeah. But here's the interesting thing. The final step. White is the number associated with chesed. Red is the number associated with gvura. And here it's the opposite. And that's exactly the point. There's a famous expression in Kisvei Harizal known as achlifu duchtayu. Achlifu duchtayu means the places have to be substituted. Like we're learning here, for the oir to be able to be communicated in a healthy way, it has to have the keli to be mitzamtzemet. It has to have the right keli. The blood have so much power in them, so much oxygen, so much vitality. If they would give that entire oxygen to the cells with full intensity, not only would they not oxygenate them, they would oxidize them. It would be too overwhelming. And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom made that it's dressed up in a lavush of gvura, in a lavush of kalim. The red blood cells represents the gvura, to contain, to conceal, to restrict, to channel, that it should be the right amount and the right energy and the right capacity to be able to give life rather than to overwhelm. Conversely, whenever you're communicating gvura, you have to do it in a white garment. For example, if somebody wants to discipline their child or discipline their student, the student has to be able to feel the love, the compassion. If all they're feeling is the redness, the severity, I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you fast. If the feeling, if there's an inside one, if the feeling is, for those who know, if the feeling is that I'm disciplining you and there's a harshness to it, and the recipient can't feel the compassion, the empathy, the constructive component of it, then it's not constructive, it becomes destructive. So the white blood cells, which are combative, they are on a war, they don't tolerate anything. They're dressed up in a lavush of chesed, of whiteness, because it has to be administered in a kind way, even if the message is combative, because sometimes you got to fight. You have to fight things in yourself, and you have to fight things around you. Hashem Ish Mulcham is also a chelik of it. Sur Meirah is also part of truth. And the same is true the other way. If you want to hug somebody in love, and you don't stop, you can chas v'shalom choke the person. If you give and give and give and give and give without discrimination, without reflection, you could turn a child into a very spoiled person. There's no responsibility, there's no autonomy, there's no independence. So you always need to temper the oir hachesed b'kli hagvura. In other words, the havaya and alikim. That's why the blood cells that bring life, oir, they're dressed up in red, which is the keli. And the keli, by the way, restricts, that's what gvura is. It disciplines the oir. Not because I don't care about you, because I care about you. And I want the message to be able to be communicated, which is why we have a mashal. In other words, we're giving now a mashal for the fact that you need a mashal. The red is the mashal. It's the mashal. It gives the packaging that allows the recipient to accept it. And the other way around, the gevura also has to be tempered in white. That's the white blood cells. So the system of the way Adam, the Shalosh says Adam is Milashon Adama le'elyon. In Chumash it says Adam, we're called Adam, why? Because Vayitzer Hashem Elokim Afar, Min Ha'adama. Adam comes from the word Adama, earth. The Shalosh says that it comes from the Lashon Adama le'elyon. Adama le'elyon is a term in Tanakh that was said by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar said Adama le'elyon. I'm compared to God. In other words, he thought that he was God. So every person has to deal with Nebuchadnezzar's some psychological mashagasim, that he had the Napoleonic complexes, and he thought that he was God. The pshat is, there's a truth to it, in a healthy way. Adam le'elyon, the Adam is a mashal. Adama comes from the word doime, dimyon. I reflect the Elyon. That's an Adam. Every nekuda in Adam reflects the Elyon, reflects the divine. So in Mela, the whole structure of how the blood circulation flows in the body is a reflection of the whole mandate and the whole function of Torah, and how divine energy is communicated into the world. There's not one nekuda in biology. There's not one nekuda in neurology. There's not one nekuda in geology and cosmology, etc., etc. In other words, both in the micro and the macro, the small world and the big world, that is not a mashal for the nimshal. And the reason it's a mashal is not just because it's a good idea. Let's give an idea from the blood, then it'll bring out a good idea in a nice way. No. It's mishtalshal mimenu. It evolves from it. It's the spiritual idea that's incarnated and manifested in the physical. It's not two separate things. That's what Shlomo Melech was teaching. It's not pshat, there's love here. But when you study love here, you could find out ideas about love there. The love here is a manifestation of that love. That's what it is. Hainuach. If you take a look in Ramban, he has a letter about intimacy, and the Ramban calls it Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why does Ramban call it Kodesh HaKadoshim? The Kochzach and the Ramban. It's not something he found a nice word. In Tanakh, there's a name for, in the Tanakh, in Malachim, there's a name for Kodesh HaKadoshim. You know the name for it? Huh? In the Beis HaMikdash, Chadar HaMitos. You know what Chadar HaMitos is? The bedroom where the beds are. You have no better name for Kodesh HaKadoshim? You had the Kruvim there. So it's called Chadar HaMitos, the bedroom. That's what he says. They hid, one of the young kings, he's 8 years old, they had to be hidden from a mother, Asalyahu was a murderer. They hid him in Chadar HaMitos, in Malachim, in the bedroom. Why? This is the name for Kodesh HaKadoshim. And then you remember, some tatis and mamis told us, you're not allowed to go into tati and mami's bedroom. So God says, you're not allowed to go into Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's a bedroom, it's a private place. The Kohen Gadol could go in once a year, and also with a lot of achanas. Why? Not because there's criminal activity happening over there, but because there's a secret happening there. And the secret, for it to remain special, it remains a secret because it's intimate. When intimacy is in public, it's not intimate anymore. It loses its energy. What's the connection to Chadar HaMitos to Kodesh HaKadoshim? It doesn't seem like even appropriate. The answer is because in Yiddishkeit, there's no fragmentation between heaven and earth. It's not like when we speak about beds, suddenly we became mundane, secular people. That perception is part of the tragedy of Mayim Mayim. Can people separate the two? Of course people could speak about beds and bedrooms detached from any truth and meaning. But in the ultimate sense, there's no separation. Ein Kiddush, Elo, b'makam Suda. There's no Kedusha, only b'makam Suda, in the place where you eat. They're not separated. Hapam Yilavi Yishielai. So Mele Kodesh HaKadoshim is also Chadar HaMitos. It's the bedroom between Hashem and Knesset Yisrael. Every bedroom, in other words, in its essence, is a Kodesh HaKadoshim. Or I should say, every bedroom could be a Kodesh HaKadoshim. That is its true essence. And that doesn't mean it's a bedroom where there's no people who have no bodies. It's a people who are people like people. And that's the point, that people as people are a reflection of Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Ramban says that he speaks about the intimacy of a husband and wife, and he says that this quality is the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Yiddishkeit. That's what he said. The Ramban writes this. It's not. I didn't say the Ramban says this. Okay. Huh?
Announcement. Does anybody have work for me? The rabbi just took my day job.
Another job, you can write this down.
You have to provide thermosites.
Not bring
Now he's a stand top the tree. Because he doesn't go once a year.
Michelle says.
Doesn't Kodesh mean separate?
Yeah.
So
Kodesh Kadoshim is separate from being separate. Kodesh is separate. Kodesh Kadoshim means that he's Kodesh from Kedusha. He's separate from separateness. He separates himself from being separate. What does that mean? He comes back. There's a place for Kedusha. Sometimes you have to separate yourself. That's what Rashi says, Kedoshim to you, Purushim to you. But the ultimate calling of Kedusha is inclusive, not exclusive.
Yesterday he said, give an emotional blind one thoughts in space. I feel like I just came back from space.
What's this Rashi Tavis here called Omek O?
Oirech v'roichev.
And this one on Hey Hey, he's got a lot of time.
Harehu.
Hooray.
Harehu.
Where's the Ramban? It's not the Ramban Kedoshim you're talking about.
No. It's a letter that the Ramban wrote.
In the Igros Ramban, you'll find it. What is Igros Ramban?
Yeah.
Chevelle.
Letter of the Ramban.
Red blood cells also do a lot of gevuras because they take CO2 back. So, they take CO2.
Right. But that Echmamela.
Not only they give, they take it back.
Wonderful.
Lo hoya ha'olam kedai.
So they actually do both. Oisotov and Surah.
Huh?
They do both. Oisotov and
Yes, you're right.
and
You're saying even the red blood cells do surmeira. They take away the
You said
psilus.
also
Emes.
by Vayeshev with it's in the Haisopilekish with you said that same idea because it was about
Muz the Yoikno Shal Yaakov Aviv.
yeah and all
The Maggid says, yeah, you know what the
Yosef,
Maggid says.
three people Yosef that the
Hillel, the Blazer ben Charsim. The Moira Nayim, you mean, the Moira Nayim. Your father's alma mater.
And the truth is that
Is that
white,
your family alma mater?
the white cells, they give tremendous chesed, so, right? By fighting external forces.
The Mezritcha Maggid once said, it says that Yaakov, you hear Dr. Michelle, the Maggid writes, maybe I said it in that shir, that the Mezritcha Maggid that says that Yosef, Vayavei Habai Salasas Malachtoi with Potiphar's wife, but then he saw the Muz the Yoikno Shal Yaakov Aviv. So he says, how did that save him? So he says, a hafladik of art. Potiphar's wife was beautiful. That was the issue. She was, and he was beautiful. Yefei Toiv, Yefei Mara. Yaakov is Midas HaTiferes. The Muz the Yoikno Shal Yaakov Aviv Rabba Chaloin. He traced back her Tiferes to the source. He says, what am I going to sell myself to this Tiferes? If I connect myself to Yaakov, I'll have the real Tiferes. I'm looking for something. I'm looking for beauty. A person wants beauty.
try that.
But I want the nimshal. I don't want the marshal. The problem is when you're in such a moment, it's not so easy to try that. Maybe if you're Yosef, that's where Kedusha is. You want to know the first level of Kedusha? In other words, people hear this, they go to the other extreme, and then they romanticize themselves as though they're always there. This is an ideal idea, but sometimes you just have to run. You're not capable.
That's why in Art Scroll they translated that way.
I didn't say a name. I didn't say a name. But tell me, which is more empowering for people, you think? Which message?
I'm here.
When you treat people as ignorant, that's what you get. The truth is, it's a different derech, maybe.
I went
Black and white.
Once went to Rabbi before he gave a shir. He gave over that introduction basically when he was giving shir and shir. So he gave over that introduction also. But where do you get a good translation? Got to go to the other side to get the literal translation.
No, everybody translates
So now
literal.
you tease me. I have to start learning it.
Shashira.
Yeah, I mean, you sold it as pretty exciting.
I sold it. Rabbi Akiva said it's Kodesh Kadoshim. I sold it. There's a lot of Yidden that say it every Friday before Shabbos. Medaf Abal Tefillah. Yeah.
Yishmael Leiman. It's slaves. So it almost sounds like it's not even worthy of the fact that they separated